Welcome to the Building Blocks podcast, where we discuss the career paths of leaders in the energy, utility, and construction fields to better understand the habits, routines, and mindset that has built these successful men and women. I'm your host, Brad Coleman. It took me 20 years to understand my strengths. My goal is to identify the common traits of leaders in our industry to provide you with the tools you need to be successful in a fraction of that time. Thank you for listening. For more information on these guests and others, please come find me on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening. For more information on these guests and others, please come find me on LinkedIn. Welcome to the Building Blocks podcast. My name is Brad. I'm your host. On the podcast, we like to break down the successful journeys of men and women in the engineering, construction, project management space, construction and utilities, to find out what has made them successful in their careers, helping those of us that are still on our journey to be able to maybe not make some of the mistakes that they made. Today, I'm joined by Nitchen. Kyle's a project manager at Layton Construction out in the Los Angeles area. Layton, for quite a while, a progression of promotions, which from project engineer to project manager. He also has his own writing that he does on LinkedIn that we'll definitely take time to get into, and I definitely want to hear more about. Starting out with his career back as a field engineer with Kiewit many years ago. Kyle, welcome to the podcast today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what your careers look like?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brad. It's been really cool to interact with you on LinkedIn and get to know you on that platform and to be here on your podcast now and speak to you face to face virtually is really cool. So I appreciate you having me. Yeah, for my background, for those who don't know me, like Brad said, now I'm senior project manager at Layton Construction. And starting out, I guess just to go way, way back, I had like an unconventional career path, I think you would say. Starting in high school, just to begin and set the stage, I never really was your typical very straight A student or get any really good grades for that matter. I just was never really able to focus really in a formal education environment. So really school was never a big priority for me at that time. It was really hard for me to connect the dots, and I felt like my head was in a cloud. I couldn't really understand. Everyone was off, had plans to go to college, and that was the last thing I wanted to do. So that just sets the stage there, and I hope those that may feel like that could maybe emphasize, and that's okay. But so from there, after high school, what I did is I went to get a job, and I started off as a landscape laborer for my local landscape company, and I was just a laborer working on a crew there and landscaping houses and small commercial projects. At the time, that was freaking awesome. I was 18 years old and I loved it. I loved working with my hands, working outside and working hard. It was awesome. I work in 12-hour days, humping sod, laying brick, pouring concrete, and I really enjoyed the work that we did. And walking away from houses and buildings, looking at the end result was always really cool. And so that was what I did for about 2 or 3 years right after high school, and eventually was able to get my head out of the cloud a little bit and think to myself, oh, hey, what do I want to do with my life? What is it that I want to do? And let me create a little plan. And so I ended up getting into a college. I went to Colorado State University and again, wasn't too interested. I knew that was the right step, but picking a degree for me was challenging. When I looked at all the options, none of them clearly resonated with me, but there was this option of construction management. There was a degree there, construction management. And that one, since I had that previous experience with the landscaping and working on construction sites, I figured, you know what, let's do that. Let's try that. And that's what I did. I stuck to it. Also played hockey in college, and that was a big thing for me. A lot of fun, met a lot of cool people, and got a great experience that way. But so I went through 4 years of construction management, got my degree, and then I landed an internship, like you mentioned, with Kiewit, and then eventually got in connect with Layton Construction and got hired on with them. At that time, I really was in Colorado at the time, and I was just interested in getting out of Colorado and going traveling. I wanted to go travel. And so Layton assured me that they could do that. and they provided me the opportunities to go out and do that. And I moved 2 weeks after graduating. I moved to Miami and started my first role on a big construction project with Layton. And from there on, I've been with them since, and it's been a great company that's provided me endless opportunities and been around some pretty great people. So that's how I got to where I am now.
What sort of projects do you all do at Layton?
At Layton, we do pretty much everything. We do everything from big box structures to stadiums to art centers to hospitals. Okay. So we have different business units, but I am in the healthcare business unit. So I do hospitals.
And tell us a little bit about like your transition. You were in Miami first, and you were in more of a project engineering type role at that point. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that is correct. I started as a project engineer, which, if you're not familiar with, that's the entry level job as coming into the construction management side of the business from an office. Usually, if you're thinking about going the office route, like the project management route, you find yourself in a project engineer role. If you're maybe thinking of going the field route or superintendent route, you might find yourself in a field engineer role. But every company does it a little bit differently. And that's not to say that you can't stay on one side. You can flip flop and go as you need, but that's generally how it is. I was in the project engineering side.
And that's the part you said the project engineer is a little more of the office facing.
Yeah,
But
typically. Yep.
what did you like about that aspect of that job? I mean, I know a lot of times your first job out of college is just take whatever you can get. But what were the features of a project engineer? What were the features of your personality that drew you toward being good in a project engineer position?
Well, that's a good question, and I may not answer it the way you want because, or the way you might anticipate, because the project engineering role was tough for me, honestly, and maybe some other folks can relate to this. And I've certainly have talked to many in the industry, and they really do. Coming out of college and getting in the project engineer role, it's tough. It's a tough role. You can imagine on a big project, shit typically rolls downhill. So you're getting a lot of the paperwork, a lot of busy work, RFIs, submittals, inspections, documentation. It's not a glamorous job. And honestly, I had a lot of challenges in that role personally because I was in this position where I thought, and maybe there's some society pressures out there, I thought that I really needed to do what I was passionate about. There's a lot of noise and a narrative out there that says, do what you're passionate about, be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, make $1 million, work online, start an online. There's all this noise out there. And I'm sitting there, project engineer, stamping submittals and regurgitating RFIs and doing all this paperwork. And I was thinking to myself, man, I'm not really passionate about this construction stuff. I don't get it. I couldn't really find myself in that position. And so I actually had a lot of turmoil when I was first starting internally, thinking, is this really what I want to do? Is this construction? Doing this paperwork and constantly fighting with architects and in this challenging, high pressure environment? Is this what I want to do? And luckily, I stuck with it and I did a lot of reflecting and thinking. And I figured out that, you know what? The construction space really wasn't what I was passionate about per se. And through talking to others and seeking some mentorship and being around good mentors inside the company, Layton, we had some great people that were working there. I figured out my own lane and my own way. I figured out I was passionate about the leadership stuff. I was passionate about leading teams and driving a mission. And so once I got out of that project engineer role and learned it, and I did my best, like I want to be clear about that. I did my best. I was always just trying to do what's best for the team and put the team first, even in that role. Once I got through it and started running my own projects a little right after that, then everything started clicking for me. And I knew what I was talking about. I was speaking from a place of knowledge and I was contributing more in different ways. And I figured, you know what, this is about leading. For me, it wasn't really about the construction, it was more about the leading and the people. And that's how I found my lane. And then from there, I got on this fast track of career growth from there.
First off, what this is post college? You had spent a couple years working before you even went into college. About what age were you when you were wrestling with some of these things about trying to figure out your way when you said you weren't passionate about construction?
Yeah, I was 24, 25, 26. I was in
Okay.
my mid 20s, 27 even a little bit. And I think on 27, it really started to click and I understood. Maybe it was a maturity thing too. I had to get through, mature a little bit. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that for listeners because there is a lot of noise out there about got to do what you're passionate about. Yeah, that was the thing. Instead of trying to figure out what I was passionate about, I shifted my focus to getting really good at something. And once I became really good at something, then I found passion in what I was doing. It's like a paradox a little bit because it's easy to think that other way. And I almost was contemplating quitting. I was like, I got to go find something else to do. But thank goodness I didn't because I love where I am now.
I think there's a trend. I noticed, I seem to remember when in mid to late 20s, even up to the age of 30, I noticed a trend with a lot of my friends. And it seemed like it was more so with the men than the women. I don't know. Maybe that was just my situation. That not that there were a lot of pivots necessarily in careers, but there was a lot of questioning of that sort of thing. I think that could have been what you were experiencing is what I experienced and what a lot of my circle experienced was we get our first jobs and you're testing things out. You feel like you have to have a little more things figured out when you get closer to 30 because you're starting to maybe have a small family or something. And that's a lot of the time that I saw a lot of my friends pivot to different careers, maybe than what they had gone to school for, or when a lot of them went back to school for their MBA. That's about the age that I did. So I think that's a time of exploration. And it sounds like it was perfect for you because if there ever is a time to take risks in your career, it's in that mid to late 20s because you have a lot more flexibility in your schedule and a lot more the opportunities might not come to you at that point the way that you would hope, but you have a lot more risk tolerance. I think it's talked about less than it should be. I think it happens a lot more for people in our culture than we like to admit. So even still, I'm feeling like that resistance with you, almost like you're nervous to talk about it. Not that it's shame, but almost like, hey, but I appreciate you putting yourself out there and being willing to share it because I think it's extremely valuable anyone else that needs to hear about the challenges that we face coming out of college. And I think it's completely normal to have those same feelings.
Yeah.
But what I hear also is not the job that changed, something in your mindset changed, whether I don't know if maybe the change precipitated the job change within Layton or exactly what that was, but you went through a little exploratory process to find out, okay, if I'm not good at this or I don't enjoy this part, the construction part, how did you land? I mean, you had to do some kind of self awareness work there to really figure out that it was the people side and the leadership side that you do want to go after more, right? I mean, any real aha moments there or what happened there in that process?
It was a lot of self-exploration. Like it was on top of my mind because I really wanted to get this right. I was like, I need to figure out this career thing. And so I was asking myself a lot of questions, right? And I was trying to do a lot of self-exploration. Okay, what do I like talking about on a Saturday night? What is my past experience? What can I draw from that and use in my career? So I had to ask all these questions, and I went and read a lot of books, listened to a lot of people, listened to a lot of interviews, stuff like this, understanding people's journeys and how they came to be who they were today. And it wasn't this straight line. It wasn't like Tom Brady now, oh, he picked up a football and right away he knew he was a football player from the day one. Like that is a very, I don't know, linear journey. And he even went through some adversity in his career. It was just understanding that these things aren't black and white and you really just have to push down. But the one aha moment for me was to not look at things like trying to find your passion. It was really to get good at something. Once I made that shift to like, hey, I'm actually just going to be freaking amazing at this. I'm going to do this better than anyone else. And it was once I got that advantage and to actually be the guy that people would turn to, things started clicking in me as like I locked in and figured that, okay, now I just wanted to continue to get better. And then that gave me more opportunity to actually do more things that I was passionate, which was to lead people. And once I got like promoted to manage my first project, it was awesome. I was running my own show. It felt like I was running my own little business. And I was like, oh, this is what I wanted in the first place. And so I had to work into that position to be able to find the passion. It was like paradoxical, but I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I've noticed within organizations in general, but within a smaller and rapidly growing company like ours, that a lot of times, if you will take ownership of either a process or a function or whatever you do, not for the sake of hoarding information, but the sake of growing, becoming an expert in that field, it makes you so much more valuable, not just to the company, but in everything that you do. And you learn lots of lessons along the way of managing yourself and finding your own growth by doing that. And it takes a lot of reflection, a lot of self-awareness, exactly what you're talking about. So then you started moving into a project manager role, and somehow it went from almost East Coast to West Coast,
Hmm.
right? What was that transition?
Yeah, so I was in Miami, Florida, and I it was fun being single guy in Miami, Florida was a lot of fun and the project was awesome. But I knew that Miami wasn't the long-term place where I wanted to stay. So I put my hand up and I said, "Hey, Killen, on the next project, if there's an opportunity back out west somewhere, I'd like to explore that." So that opportunity came about and I moved to Los Angeles area, the Los Angeles Greater County, and started doing healthcare work in this area. And I've been moving around Southern California for basically since then. And yeah, that's where I got the first project management role. And that was an excellent transition. Immediately, I got a lot more responsibility. I was focused and I took ownership of that. And my drive was kicking in. And I was like, let's go. And so from there, still had a lot to learn, but learned it through just taking action and reflecting. And that's what I'm still doing. Slowly and slowly over the years have just been given bigger and better projects and managing bigger teams, and it's all good. It's fun. This is the place to be, this industry.
What drives your growth mindset and mentality that you've got? You mentioned the books that you've read and that sort of thing, but what is some of the driving internal factors with you that you feel like have made up your strengths and your growth in your career that gotten you to where you are today?
There's a number of things driving growth. It's having a big vision. Like I have a very big vision of where I want to be and more importantly, who I want to be. And so for me to go to that level of what I want to do and who I want to become, there's skills and there's things I need to go through to go become that and to accomplish those things. So, as a default to that and willing to go after it, you got to read books. You got to go put yourself around the best people. You got to take action, default aggressive, bias for action. So, that is what's driving me towards where I want to become. I want to I want to build over $1 billion worth of construction. People, it's like the way some people have impacted my life, which is incredible. Like they've have changed, people have come across my life and have changed my life. And I want to do that for other people as well. I want to have things like financial freedom. I want to have things like that. So those aren't just like wild wants. They're true goals. They're written down and they're part of the plan. There I review them often. And on the micro level, the day-to-day stuff, my actions are trying to align with those bigger goals. And so that's how I think about things, and that's the process that's going in my head. And that's what has birthed some of these things that was good career growth, good opportunities. That's what's birthed this newsletter that I'm writing, which is becoming very successful. And yeah, it's just an effort to continue to grow and to continue to be better and to continue to lead and help others.
I'm hearing Jocko language in your phrasing there, bias towards action and that sort of thing. And what's some of your favorite authors, books, and whatnot that have
Oh
gotten you
man.
here?
Jocko's definitely one of them, man. Jocko has helped me a lot. And going back to those moments that we were talking about earlier of inner turmoil and stuff, thinking through my career and contemplating it, Jocko was one of those figures that helped me see things clearly. Love that guy, love his books, love his podcasts, and I've actually even
There's,
we've hired his company to come speak at our company before. So yeah, it's really cool.
when you don't want to do the thing you need to do, there's nothing scarier than hearing Jocko's voice in your head.
Yeah. Yep. His video, I don't know if you shared it on LinkedIn or not, but the good video, that is just it's music to my
It,
ears. I love it.
if I hadn't, then someone just beat me to it.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with that, basically his motto is whatever happens to us in life, his response is always good,
Yeah.
meaning it is what it is, right? And I think a lot of that is based in Stoic principles of the situation in front of us is what it is. And I heard a term yesterday for the first time that describes a lot of the Stoic principles. It said controlling the controllables, which is so perfect. We can't get anxious or concerned about the things that are outside of our control. All we can do is worry about what's in front of us right now. The past doesn't matter. How we got here doesn't matter. All we can do is focus on going forward and not moving backwards.
Yeah.
So, what do Kyle's goals look like for the next 5, 10, 15 years in personal and professional? I'm hearing lots of not specific goals. When you're talking about, you said you want to build $1 billion in construction, that's very specific. But when you start talking about influence over people, financial freedom, that's more about how you want to live your life and what the type of life that you want to live and the type of person that Kyle wants to become. I've always had difficulty operating in very hard set goals because in my mind it makes it too rigid. Whereas you're focusing more on the flow of how you become the person that you need to become. What does that look like for Kyle in the next 5 or 10 years?
The flow, like the specific flow, the next 5 to 10 years.
You're doing the daily steps to become the person that you, who are you aspiring to be in the next 5 or 10 years? How do you want to influence people? In what way?
In the professional realm, who I want to become in the professional world is a leader in the construction industry. So I want to be one of the leaders in the construction industry that's leading and hopefully helping others and helping other companies or people or teams on how to build efficiently, build with integrity, and helping others reach their goals inside of this professional world. So, like, I hope all the people that work under me, because they work under me, they get promoted and make more money and get more opportunity for them. So that's a big driver for me. In the personal world, for me, it's having the same or similar impact with my family and close friends, making their lives better, being able to be there for my son and my wife and my family. So having the time to do that as well. And then in the long term, I would love to own and operate my own company that is able to provide for families and other people and be able to support people in that way and hopefully take as many people off a path that they don't want to be on and get them on the path that they do want to be on. I think if we have more people that are on the path, as Jocko likes to say, on the path, that's great. There's nothing better than being on your path.
You had a post just the other day. It might have actually been yesterday about your 10 favorite books. And there's a lot of them I had read, but there's some of them that I actually hadn't. What's some of the principles that you draw from some of these books that you like to share?
Yeah, yeah. So I did just share a post, and those were 10 books that I shared, really more specific to construction project leadership.
Yeah.
So really construction related, but really you could take and suck out some of those leadership principles to any area or domain. But some of those books, like The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, really great one for listeners who want to check out and understand team dynamics and how team is really all built on trust is the underlying base. And from there, there's other dysfunctions that cause complexity inside a team. But once you understand the framework of that's inside that book, can really help you build strong, lasting teams and that are built on a really strong foundation. And they're the highest performing teams. Another good one in there is The Captain Class. I'd recommend a lot. That's been one of my favorite books I've read lately, and I read it in the past 2 years. It's basically the author took, he studied the entire history of sports, and he narrowed down out of all the sports teams in history, he narrowed down the top 16 most dominant teams and across all the different sports, rugby, hockey, basketball, football, all of it. And he narrowed down the top 16 teams and the teams that went on to dominate for like a decade, like complete and utter domination. And he narrowed it down and determined that they all have one thing in common, and that is they all had the same type of captain. Not a captain that you would think. It's not like a Michael Jordan or a LeBron James or anyone like that. It was a captain that kind of was selfless. He didn't like the spotlight, and he would do anything that it took to support his team. And so there's 7 traits in the book of what the captain what that kind of captain is, and it's really good for modeling if you want to model after some of these incredible leaders. And it's like having a captain like that over your team is like jet fuel for team performance. So check that one out. Another one is a strategic thinking book that I love is 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene, and it takes some of the basic war strategies that you'd find, and what's surprising is that you can apply those to business, life, and construction even, because we're all in a war of some sorts. Just the enemies look a little bit different. In construction, our enemies are waste and variation, and when you attack things strategically, you can minimize those a lot.
Is there any parallel to the art of war there? Is it the same type of thing, or do we take the art of war and we draw business parallels off of it, which is essentially what Robert Greene is doing?
I don't think I've read The Art of War, so I can't really draw, but he takes these war strategies, talks about it from a war perspective, and then talks about it in a business or life perspective.
Very cool. I had not even heard of that one. I had heard the captain's class described before, but I did not even recognize the name.
Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Yeah. So, what do you see from a talent standpoint coming into the construction world from your perspective? What recommendations would you have for young people coming into the industry? Would you recommend your path based on what you did? Would you recommend something different?
I'd recommend anyone that wants to succeed, make an impact, and get a lot of opportunity and have a really rewarding career to come into the construction industry. We're in a very unique time right now where, to be honest, there's a very low supply of talent in our industry. That's what I think. There's a low supply of people in general, both in the trades and in management. And over the next 6 to 10 years, if that supply is going to even drops significantly, there's people retiring and there's not enough backfill of people that are coming into the industry. So the issue is going to compound more and more of the supply is going to get lower. So there's huge demand for opportunity. If you like the building challenge and working with teams, working with people across various domains and coming together and taking a vision, which is a set of plans, and making that a reality, which is putting it in place, it's awesome. It's an incredible journey, very challenging, It's an incredible process and it's very rewarding. And there's a lot of opportunity. You can work on some of these great projects and impact your community in a great way. So, yeah, I would recommend people get in here, get your hands dirty, and come get in on this because there's a lot of opportunity here for everybody.
And it's twofold, right? They say that not enough people, not enough young people are coming into the construction utility industry, but then they also talk about the great retirement that's supposed to happen in the next couple of years. And if when those two collide, it's going to be an even bigger problem. Any thoughts on knowledge transfer? How do we capture some of that knowledge and expertise that some of the retiring generation is going to have and take with them? And that's my concern, is we're going to lose a lot of good wisdom there.
Yes. Yeah, I think about that all the time. How are we going to train these new people? What are we going to teach them? I think a couple areas is one, people need to step up and step into marketing some of this stuff, doing things like you're doing right now, an interview podcast. Interview these people, talk about it, document it. We're in the mid range, we have an obligation maybe to go get this knowledge ourselves so that we can be part of the knowledge transfer. That's things like I'm doing with my newsletter. I'm trying to think through these things about how to properly build, how to build efficiently, how to lead teams effectively, how to set up a deal properly, how to lead projects, manage people. Yeah, and so I'm trying to do my part in that to educate the next generation.
I've wondered if we could create a new training type environment with some of the older generation before they retire, because it's going to do a couple of things. If for one thing, if they're helping to train some of these younger people, it's going to help with the knowledge transfer, but also it's going to keep from burning them out quite as quick. I think that we need to transition some of them into more of a mentoring type role, and it's not necessarily something that they would be comfortable with. It might be awkward, but particularly the older generation, I don't think that they appreciate how much they know. And it almost creates a, I don't want to say humbleness, but it's almost, they don't think that they have anything to pass on. And so they take their own knowledge and wisdom to for granted. So
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be some of us here in the middle, they're going to have to step up and say, no, I need you coaching these guys. And you might not know what that looks like for at first, but we're going to have to get it done. We're going to have to put ourselves out there, and I'll help facilitate the discussions on both ends of the spectrum there with the generations. My concern is how receptive they would be to that, because they're going to see it like you're trying to run them out of the field. And actually, it's almost the opposite, really. It's like you're trying to prolong their careers
Yeah.
by saving their backs and their knees. I don't know that there's anybody out there that really has a plan for transitioning that knowledge yet, but I'd be interested to learn if there's anybody actively working on that.
Yeah. That's a great idea there. Yeah, I agree. Something's going to have to be done and sooner than later.
You mentioned briefly lean and efficiencies and waste, but you talk about it a lot more than you've kind of hinted at just in the time that we've been talking. What are your experiences with lean and those sorts of methodologies? And what are your thoughts on how we implement those sorts of things in the field?
Yeah, lean's very important, and it's I've been on my lean journey for many years now, and really it's become a buzzword, and there's so many different opinions and stuff published on it. But really, for me, it's like lean is just a better way of doing things. It's just that's how I think about it. It's like how do I do things better, more efficiently, more effective, save time, save no, and create more value, right? That's what we want to do. And so lean is the framework of how we do that. And so how do we implement it? Well, we got to know what we're implementing and why we're doing it. I'd always start with why. And to do that successfully on especially on projects where it's completely new to people, you have to show people the bigger picture, the why. Say, okay, guys, this is why we're here doing this. This is what we're going to do, and this is why it matters to you, and this is why it matters to the bigger picture. And that's where I would start. And I'd start small and I would start quick and just gradually ramp up from there. Something as simple as just let's organize our workspace. Let's make the workspace more efficient. Let's 5S it. Let's sort it. Let's shine it. Let's get it all organized and labeled. And let's make ourselves work a little bit more efficiently in our work area. That could be the job site, could be the office, could be whatever. And then that environment typically will, when you clean up your environment, that'll typically start creating a creating new behaviors, seeing new standards and seeing things differently. And then there's a bunch of other things you could go on from there with the way you plan your work, the way you execute your work. But lean is very important. It's just about being better. It's just about being more efficient. And it's just about maximizing your value that you create inside your own organization and on your finished product, which is your project.
I've always been concerned about how receptive people will be to that sort of thing. And I heard Jesse Hernandez recently say, he said, you can tell them, but when, as you say, when they are buzzwords, sometimes you get a bunch of eye rolls from people because it's just another initiative. It's just something else until you look at what they're doing and the setup and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing it like this? Or would it save you time if you did it like this? What would you think if maybe we tried it like this? And it opens the door for those conversations. And when they can actually see the savings, the efficiency, maybe it saves their effort or makes their job just quicker and easier. It's a lot easier for them to be able to accept the change. And it also lowers their defensive guard against you coming in and messing with their processes.
That's right. He is spot on there. Throwing a bunch of lingo at people, it's not going to really do it. You got to approach them on the human level and really speak to their emotions and why. Always start with why it's important, why this works.
Well, if there's anything, what in the industry do you see, just generally speaking? I'm not asking you to call out any particular group or anything like that, but what would you like to see changed in the industry from your perspective in the next, say, in the next generation?
If it were up to me, if I had some magic wand, I would love to see us less siloed a little bit. I feel like we are with the owner, the architect, the engineers, the contractor. We're a little bit less we're a little bit siloed, and just by the way that the system is set up, we're all working in our own little bubbles and working inside of our own best interests, right? I would love if the industry, we saw a way to reorganize ourselves so that we're always working in the best interest of the owner and the actual owner of that project and really the process. Like that's when you would get into extreme efficiency. The architect's always working in the way that's most efficient for them, and the contractor's always working in a way that's most efficient for them, and the owner's doing the same thing. There's so much efficiency that maybe we could get out of that. And at the end of the day, it's the owner's cash that's on the line. But if there was a way that we could blend in, and this would take like a big overhaul of systemic setup, we could blend in and all work in the efficiency of the project, which is the whole entire system. And some projects do get to that level, but it's very much the minority.
It's not an industry standard for sure.
It's not an industry standard. Like a lean IPD project, integrated project delivery, that's probably like the closest it gets, and that's a whole different delivery method, but very rare, very much the minority. So I think that would be awesome if in the next 10 years we start flipping the script there and we could just deliver super profitable projects in terms of being the owner. But yeah.
What that made me think of, the buzzword that came to mind for that, or it's a buzzword now, it wasn't back then. In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they talk about synergy.
Mm,
Back, that was the first time I heard the word synergy, and I think that I'm going way back in the memory banks. I think they define it as the collective efforts of the whole are greater than the sum of the individual parts. By coming together and thinking about the whole, exactly what you're saying, there's more effort, there's more there's more production. In your case, in your example, there's more efficiencies created by thinking about that big picture, right?
Yep.
When you said silo, it's funny. For me, a lot of my work in the utility side is actually the pre-construction. I would say 90% of what I do as a project manager is the pre-construction side.
Okay.
And so when we talk about silo, it's a lot of internal departments.
Mm-hmm.
It's the project management interfacing with business development, finance, accounting, legal, all of the different aspects that have to go into getting a project to construction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the exact same thing. It's just on a different scale. And instead of being outward facing, it's inward facing. But I think that there's a lot to be gained for someone that can bring all of those pieces of the organization together. And it's tough because it takes the ability to show empathy toward another person of, I care about you doing your job. I want to make your job easier. I want to do what I can to help you do your job better. What could I change?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to go first very often. And that takes a lot of vulnerability sometimes to go first, to say, how can I help you?
That's a great example. Another one. Yep.
We're getting close to time. I want to leave you with the last word from a leadership perspective with young professionals, some of the wisdom that maybe you've gained over your career. Tell us a little bit about, I'll leave you with the last word of what you would want to share with, let's say, Kyle's younger self, and also talk a little bit about where people can find you and connect with you, including your newsletter.
Yeah. I guess to end it, we've touched on it. For those that are maybe starting in their career, my younger self, I wish I would have heard and learned that to get good at something, keep working at it. To get good at something, it should be your main focus. And then let the passion find you inside of that. Add value. And what I mean by getting good at something is figuring out how to add value to do what's in your box, let's say, of ownership as best as you can, and do it to the best of your ability. Be the yardstick of quality for what you do. Be the example. And from there, only good things will come, and you'll find your way and find your path. For getting a hold of me or connecting with me, the best place to do that is on LinkedIn. I post daily there about these things, these ideas of leadership, project management, lean construction, things, anything under those ideas. So come over, connect with me, and engage with me and join the conversation. Number two is my newsletter. That's where I do my deepest thinking. Every week, every Tuesday, I send out a weekly newsletter. It's called the Influential Project Manager, and it covers the essentials of project leadership. And so we talk about frameworks, ideas, strategies, tools, technologies, anything related to helping you lead successful projects with confidence. So every Tuesday, a new essay goes out, and no spam, no BS or anything like that. So I'd love to come have you join. Right now, we're approaching 3,000 subscribers. So it's a good, healthy community, and it's going really well so far.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, I really do appreciate the time. Good catching up with you, finally getting to talk to you in person, and look forward to being able to continue these conversations, man. Appreciate it. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, Brad, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Building Blocks podcast. If you found anything beneficial from today, I would appreciate you reaching out and letting me know on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for ways to add value to the listeners and interviewing leaders in our industry. If you found this helpful, I would appreciate if you leave us a review and reach out to me on LinkedIn and give me some feedback. In addition, if you know someone that would be good for an interview, please let me know and I'd be happy to connect with them. You can find myself and any of the other guests on LinkedIn, where we continue the conversations about leadership, careers, growth, and development.